As efforts to secure a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict continues, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has agreed to send delegations to Egypt and Qatar to push forward the negotiations. Now, negotiators have been trying to secure the release of Israeli hostages as part of a possible Gaza ceasefire deal. On Friday, Netanyahu's office said that he spoke with the heads of Israeli intelligence agencies Shin Bet and Mossad and also approved that delegation on their behalf to go to Doha and Cairo in the coming days. A Moscow district court on Friday ordered another suspect in the concert hall attack to be held in custody until the 22nd of May pending trial. On the 22nd of March, a deadly attack at the Crocus City Hall killed at least 140 and injured several others. The ninth suspect, Latufulloy Nasrimad, a native of Tajikistan, has now been charged under Russia's Terrorist Act. Separately, Russia's investigative committee said the suspects had stated that their actions had been coordinated by voice messages from a man via Telegram messenger. It also said it was investigating potential involvement of representatives of the Ukrainian special services in the organization and also financing of the attack. Staying on Russia, it has vetoed the renewal of the UN panel of experts who monitor North Korea's compliance with international sanctions. The Kremlin says its veto is in line with its interests. The Russian move comes amid accusations from the United States, South Korea and other countries that Moscow purchases weapons from Pyongyang to use it in the war against Ukraine. DD India's Tasha Chernyshova has more from Moscow.
Russia vetoed the UN Security Council resolution that sought to extend the monitoring of UN sanctions against North Korea over its nuclear program. Moscow says its veto comes as all approaches to solving the problem on the Korean peninsula have yielded no results and will not improve the security situation in the region. Russian Foreign Ministry's spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said in the absence of mechanisms that revise the UN Security Council's sanctions and ease them, they only hinder confidence building and political dialogue. Zakharova pointed out that the group of experts of the UN Security Council's 1718 committee has, in her words, lost all the standards of objectivity and impartiality. She said that's why Moscow insists on establishing specific conditions for sanctions in order to review them and to make further decisions. Moscow's decision has been criticized by the Western countries that claim that Moscow is seeking to avoid scrutiny and allegedly violates those sanctions by buying weapons from Pyongyang. Moscow dismisses those accusations. The vote will have no impact on the actual sanctions against North Korea, which will remain in force. Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
Now, Ukraine has received a $1.5 billion tranche of funding under a World Bank program. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal said on Friday, helping it pay for its budget and social spending as it defends itself against the Russian invasion. Now, Ukraine is resilient on financial aid from its Western partners, but foreign financing dwindled in the first 2 months of this year, and a US aid package has been blocked by Republicans in Congress for months.
Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine has largely depended on foreign support to cover its budget needs. Kyiv uses almost all of its domestic revenues, such as taxes and customs duties, to finance its military as it continues to defend itself against Russia's invasion. A recent drop in foreign funding due to delays in aid from the US and the EU caused uncertainty at the beginning of this year, where Ukraine received only $400 million from Japan in January and $800 million of financial aid from Japan, Norway, and Spain in February. Now that Ukraine has received an additional $1.5 billion from the World Bank program, and also recently the EU approving the disbursement of $4.5 billion, the outlook seems more positive, but these recent delays have raised uncomfortable questions on how Ukraine will be able to finance its expenditures if support were to stop. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Thursday he spoke to U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson on the phone, reiterating how vital it was to pass the $60 billion military aid package for Kyiv, which has remained stuck in the U.S. Congress for months. He said Russian strikes on Ukrainian cities were escalating and that they can only be stopped by the physical force of defense. Megumi Lim in Kyiv reporting for DD India.
In the latest move on the massive Russian missile and drone attacks hit the thermal and hydropower plants in central and western Ukraine in an overnight attack targeting the country's already damaged power infrastructure. Kaniv hydropower plant was among the targets along with Nitster plant located on the Dniester River. Last week, Russia also hit Ukraine's largest dam, the Dnipros, in the southern Zaporizhzhia region. A major cleanup effort is currently underway in the U.S. city of Baltimore, where crews are beginning to clear up the wreckage left by a collapsed bridge earlier this week. A cargo ship collided with the Francis Scott Key Bridge on Tuesday, and it remains in the middle of the Patapsco River, blocking shipping traffic. Officials say they are working full speed to reopen the vital shipping channel. DD India's Sally Pattinson has more.
The governor of the US state of Maryland, Wes Moore, says workers at the scene have an incredibly complex job on their hands. They're tasked with cleaning up to 4,000 tons of debris left behind after Tuesday's bridge collapse in Baltimore. Authorities believe the bodies of 4 of the victims, who are presumed dead after the collision, could be buried underneath the rubble. Governor Moore says recovering them is a top priority to bring closure, he says, to their families. His state has been awarded an initial $60 million in emergency funds by the US government to clear the vital waterway and begin rebuilding the bridge.
To know that out there you have to navigate high winds and electric wires, to go out there and to see it up close, you realize just how daunting a task this is. You realize how difficult the work is ahead of us. With a salvage operation this complex, and frankly, with a salvage operation this unprecedented, you need to plan for every single moment, and every time you take action to move a piece of wreckage, you understand that that requires you to reassess the situation.
US President Joe Biden has promised to pay for the reconstruction, stressing the importance of the Port of Baltimore to the economy. More cars and trucks go through that port each year than any other in the country, and last year it transported $80 billion worth of goods. There are concerns that there could be a spike in prices, at least temporarily, while supply chains are disrupted. And more locally, at least 8,000 workers on the docks have jobs that are directly impacted by the collapse. Meanwhile, the National Transportation Safety Board is investigating what caused the incident. The agency is interviewing the crew members from the ship, which was headed to Sri Lanka. It's also revealed the cargo ship was carrying 56 containers of hazardous materials, some of which spilled during the crash. The agency's chair called the investigation a massive undertaking, which could take up to 2 years to complete. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
US President Joe Biden says he will go to Baltimore next week following Key Bridge collapse earlier this week. Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed early on Tuesday after a cargo ship that had lost power hit the bridge in Baltimore Harbor in Maryland. Meanwhile, the United States government has approved an emergency fund of $60 million for the bridge's reconstruction. But construction workers in Baltimore paid tribute to the 6 migrants who were killed after the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge on Tuesday. The event was hosted by CASA, which is an organization that provides services to immigrant and working class families in the U.S. 2 of the victims were members of the organization.
We are joined together today for a somber moment of honoring the 6 brothers who lost their lives during the Key Bridge collapse this week, and the essential workers who performed the dangerous yet critical work of the construction.
God, we pray, Señor, oramos, that you open the doors, que tú abras las puertas, so that our people can work safely, para que nuestra gente puede trabajar seguros, without any danger, sin.
Nigeria is set to release more than 300 suspects who were thought to be part of the militant group Boko Haram. It follows the lack of evidence tying them to any crimes committed by the extremist group. DD India correspondent Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports.
At least 313 people have been on trial in northern Nigeria over suspicions of being members of the militant group Boko Haram. After a series of court proceedings, the judge sitting on the case has ordered the government to release them because the prosecutors could not provide evidence that the suspects had committed any crime. It is, however, not clear how long the suspects have been in custody or where they were being kept. But a government official says steps are underway to release them. Human rights groups have expressed concern over Nigerian authorities holding suspects for long periods without trial. In 2010, some Boko Haram suspects were detained and only went on trial 8 years later because of lack of enough evidence against them. The militant group Boko Haram has been active for more than 15 years, spreading violence and kidnapping people in many parts of northern Nigeria. In 2009, the group launched an insurgency which sought to overthrow the government. It has also been involved in the kidnapping of schoolgirls, most of whom have still not been found. Nabil Ahmed Rufai in Accra, Ghana, reporting for DD India.
A tropical cyclone that swept across the island of Madagascar this week has killed at least 18 people and displaced thousands more, the country's disaster management officers say. And the cyclone was predicted to bypass the Indian Ocean island, but it changed course, leaving hundreds of homes destroyed. DD India's Isaac Lucando has more.
Authorities say Cyclone Gaman has displaced more than 20,000 people, with 3 others still unaccounted for. They say the cyclone was advancing with wind speeds of around 150 kilometers per hour and gusts reaching 210 kilometers per hour. Aerial footage shows water-filled settlements with residents attempting to rescue those trapped in flooded homes. Humanitarian partners are working with authorities to scale up response, but assessing the full scope of the destruction has proven challenging. Many villages in the region remain cut off from the rest of the country, hampering access for rescue teams. The cyclone season in the southwestern Indian Ocean typically extends from November to April, generating about a dozen storms every year. For this reason, Madagascar, situated off the southeastern African coast, consistently endures the brunt of such severe weather events. A year ago, Tropical Cyclone Freddy wreaked havoc across the nation and its neighbors Mozambique and Malawi, resulting in the tragic loss of over 500 lives. Isaac Lucando in Dar es Salaam reporting for DD India.
And now in some more news from around the world. Ahead of Easter, Nicaraguans marked Good Friday in the Pachi of the Cathedral of Managua amid reports of restrictions from authorities on processions during Easter. Government has banned Holy Week street processions in the past due to security concerns. Good Friday marks Jesus' death by crucifixion. It continues to Sunday when Christians believe Jesus rose from the dead. Cuban Roman Catholics held public processions across the country to mark Good Friday. For decades, all religious holidays and processions were banned in Cuba, but that began to change with the visit of Pope John Paul II in 1998. Christmas and then Good Friday were recognized as holidays, and religious processions are now common. Fervor of Good Friday was also seen in Venezuela as hundreds came together to follow the decades-long Way of the Cross. Residents had prepared since January to partake in the staging of the Passion of Christ, a tradition that draws locals and visitors alike during the Holy Week. Tunisia's island is seeing bustling commercial activity during the holy month of Ramadan. Desserts and dishes like sardok sweets, dal porridge and pataclet fish are taking center stage in the island's markets. Now, special customs and traditions are also being observed by many families. And still to come on DD India Live. US to impose new visa curbs on Hong Kong officials over rights crackdown. Election Commission bans exit polls from the 19th of April till the 1st of June. And IPL's Lucknow Super Giants all set to lock horns with Punjab Kings at Ekana Cricket Stadium in Lucknow today.
Is Indian judiciary really being undermined? Is there a threat to the judicial process?
Such attempts are being made to scandalize the institution, to tarnish the image of our judges through social media and the print media.
We should ignore such tactics, underhanded tactics. At its own peril, they come with the consequences.
If something is said about the judiciary, positive manner, and the criticism is still there, it is welcome. It is a welcome move.
Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India Live with me, Deepika. Well, the United States will take steps to impose new visa restrictions on multiple Hong Kong officials on Friday who are responsible for intensifying crackdowns on rights and freedoms in the Chinese-ruled territory. In a statement, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken noted that in the past year, China continued to take actions against Hong Kong's promised high degree of autonomy, democratic institutions and rights and freedoms, including with the recent enactment of a new national security law known as Article 23. Migrants reenacted the Way of the Cross on Friday on the Mexican side of the border with Texas. U.S. court kept a controversial anti-migration state law on hold this week. The law would make it a state crime to illegally enter or re-enter Texas from a foreign country, with prison sentences of up to 20 years for those who refuse to comply. The challenge to the Texas law is one in a series of legal disputes between Republican state officials and the Biden administration over states' ability to police the border. Now, there are concerns over a rise in dengue cases across North and South America this year. The number of cases already in 2024 suggests it is likely to be the worst ever year, with places such as Puerto Rico scrambling to contain the mosquito-borne illness. Caroline Malone reports.
There have been 3.5 million cases of dengue so far only this year across the Americas. That's 3 times as many cases as there were in the first 3 months of 2023. It's setting a worrying trend for the illness that is spread by infected mosquitoes, as it can make people very sick with headaches, vomiting and severe joint pain, and it is potentially deadly. Well, one of the regions that's scrambling to contain an outbreak is the US territory of Puerto Rico, which has declared an epidemic as hospitalizations from the illness surge. Well, dengue is less common on the US mainland, but there have been cases in Florida, Texas and California states in recent years. Well, the majority of cases in the region are in Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, Peru and Colombia. Scientists think that changing weather from climate change is having an impact on this year's spread. Plus, there's also El Niño, which is creating warmer temperatures and rising sea levels. Well, dengue comes from the Aedes aegypti mosquito. It's commonly found in warmer, more humid parts of the world, particularly if there's bad sanitation and water gathering where mosquitoes can breed rapidly. Last year, there were 4.5 million cases across the Americas and 2,400 reported deaths. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
Moving on, India's President Draupadi Murmu presented the highest civilian award, Bharat Ratna, at Rashtrapati Bhavan today. Eminent personalities who received Bharat Ratna were former Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, known for introducing various liberal reforms to India's economy. Former Prime Minister Chaudhry Charan Singh, a freedom fighter and champion of farmers' rights. Eminent scientist M.S. Swaminathan, who is remembered for his pivotal role in green revolution in India and scientific contributions such as cytogenics and radiation, along with former Bihar Chief Minister Karpuri Thakur, known by the title Jan Nayak or Champion of the People. All awards were given posthumously. In yet another heroic show of valor, the Indian Navy freed at least 23 Pakistani nationals from the grasp of Somali pirates after a 12-hour operation in the Arabian Sea. The rescue happened in the early hours of 29th of March when the pirate-held hijacked vessel FVAI Kambar was intercepted by the Indian Navy cruiser INS Sumedha. With quick thinking, the guided missile frigate INS Trishul quickly joined INS Sumedha to support the mission. Indian naval troops used their strategic planning and strategic coordination to initiate negotiations with the pirates, compelling them to surrender without bloodshed. The Indian Army, in a breathtaking display of precision and strength, carried out the Rising Sun BrahMos missile strike above the Andaman and Nicobar Islands on Friday. Posting images on video on social media platform X, Army's Eastern Command said the BrahMos missile soared high above the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, igniting the skies with its unparalleled might. This showcased Indian Army's capability as a formidable force for peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region. The event also serves as a reminder of India's dedication to defending its sovereignty and fostering regional stability. Indian Army also released a video of Akash Air Defence Systems' quick deployment and engagement of high maneuverable aerial target drones. Let's take a look. And now let's get you the latest on what's happening in India in the run-up to the world's largest democratic election. In the latest development, India's Election Commission has issued a notification banning the conduct, publication or publicising of exit polls between the 19th of April till the 1st of June, when votes will be cast for the Lok Sabha and Assembly elections to be held in 4 states, including northeastern states of Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, eastern state of Odisha and southern state of Andhra Pradesh, as well as by-elections to be held in different states. Elections in India have been festive occasions, almost like carnivals. Citizens choose leaders for their local bodies, state legislatures and of course their nation, India. Here's a report on the scale and vastness of elections across India.
These are not moments of jubilation for a marriage or a family occasion. Neither it's the fervor of Diwali, the celebration of light, or Holi, the festival of colors. These are celebrations India witnesses round the year, the celebrations during the festival of elections. These happen in different pockets of India at different times of a year, and it happens almost every year. The objective of these festivities celebrated by citizens of India is to choose leaders and representatives who would run their municipalities, states, and also their nation, India. The carnival of the world's largest democracy is set to reach its peak in the next few weeks across all pockets of the country as India prepares for the general elections. It's a carnival in every sense of the word, in terms of spectacle of colours, hurly-burly, noise and exuberance. It's a festival of people's participation to run a country that has set benchmarks hard to match anywhere else in the world. The festival is observed by all Indian adults who are 18 years and above. The organizer of the major elections across the country is the Election Commission of India, or the ECI. The Election Commission is an autonomous body set up under the provisions of the Indian Constitution. It's responsible for administering the national and state election processes in the country. The body conducts and supervises elections to the Indian Parliament, comprising the Lok Sabha, the lower house, and the Rajya Sabha, the upper house. It is also responsible for the elections to the legislative assemblies and legislative councils of the 28 Indian states and the offices of the President and Vice President of India. Elections in 3 union territories, including India's capital New Delhi, Puducherry and Jammu and Kashmir, is also conducted by the Election Commission. In the elections to the Lok Sabha, citizens of India vote directly to elect the representatives in the Parliament's lower house. These elected members eventually decide on the country's Prime Minister, usually the leader of the party or the coalition with maximum representation in the House. The elections to the state assemblies decide on the heads of the state governments, known as the chief ministers. This year too, the ECI is slated to conduct elections in 6 Indian states, but the mother of all polls, the general elections, is being organized by the ECI, its first major assignment this year. The election authority is all geared up for the biggest task. This is the exercise it undertakes once every 5 years. It now faces the Herculean task of conducting elections to the 543 seats of the Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Indian Parliament, which would involve huge logistic, security and organizational engagement. The winners of these seats will eventually decide the next national government and the Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy, India.
On to sports now. India's seasoned player Rohan Bopanna and his Australian teammate Matthew Ebden will take on Croatia's Ivan Doordarshan and his American partner Austin Krajicek in the Miami Open finals today. The duo sealed a solid straight sets victory over Spain's Marcel Granollers and his Argentine partner Horacio Zeballos by 6-1 and 6-4. Earlier, the Indo-Australian pair beat Australia's Sam Wiberg and Netherlands partner John Patrick Smith in the semi-final round. And with this, it's a wrap here on DD India. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Deepika Mehto, and from all of us here in New Delhi, thank you so much for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.